Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call the meeting of the Richmond City Council for Monday, November 9th, 2020 to order. Madam Clerk, on the minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. There can be a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on October 26, 2020, and adopt the minutes of the special council meetings held on October 26 and November 2nd, 2020.
All right, may I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Any agenda additions or deletions?
None, Your Worship.
Okay, so that brings us to Committee of the Whole. We do have some delegations here at City Hall. So I'll ask for a motion to resolve in a Committee of the Whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. All right, I believe we've got two ladies who wish to delegate, so come on down. You know the drill, but we ask you introduce yourself, and you've got 5 minutes. Tell us the item on the agenda that you wish to address.
Hello, my name is Dee Whalen, and I'm a Richmond resident, longtime Richmond resident, and I'm here on behalf of the Richmond Poverty Reduction Coalition. I'd like to speak on consent agenda item. It's actually number 10, the Nonprofit Social Service Agency Space Needs Policy Options. I understand that what's before Council is a recommendation for staff to build a policy framework and to do an economic analysis of the policy. And I would ask that Council direct staff to consider not just immediate spaces, but new future spaces. There will be new nonprofit organizations coming up all the time. Another thing, to consider the best practices of other cities, and a letter that we sent to you back in April 2019 talked about these other communities in Metro Vancouver. So take a look at those too. One of those things that we would like you to consider is, instead of these spaces being developer owned, that you consider some of them would be city owned.
Welcome to TELUS Cloud Conferencing.
Sorry.
Enter your access code or meeting number. Enter your attendee ID number.
Okay.
Okay,
Number 3, we have some questions about the shell space, bringing the space inside that a nonprofit is going to use down to shell space. And I mean, I don't understand all these terms so much, but if we're down to the studs, then a nonprofit coming in to build it to their capacity to accommodate them could cost a significant amount of money for nonprofits that are sometimes strapped for funds anyway. So we would like the staff to look into that as well in their economic analysis and include those dollars that would where are they going to be costed to? Costed to the developer, costed to the nonprofit, and does that then exclude a nonprofit from moving back into that space? The fourth thing I'd like to mention is that there be a definite time frame on receiving the report back. There are 2 nonprofits now that are in the mix that have had to find other accommodation, and I know that building new space takes time, but it would be good to have a time frame on the report. And just finally, I know that part of this process is to go out and to talk to NPOs to see what their space needs are, and have they changed since the report, because it was done in, I think, 2018, quite a while ago. There are increasing needs for nonprofits for the different spaces that they need. So not only do we have to look at increasing spaces for the current nonprofits, but also for new nonprofits that need space. So that's it, and I will ask my colleague, engineer.
No. We'll finish with you.
Okay.
We'll go to the next one.
Okay.
Now,
Right.
I don't plan to have questions of staff right now. When we get to it on the agenda, we can ask the various questions. So I've got Councillor Wolf, is this a question of this delegation? Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship. To the delegate, we had some audio problems, and I think 6 councillors didn't hear what your first 2 points were. I'm not sure if you can just repeat what those first 2 points were. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. We would ask that staff be directed to take a look at new spaces, not just replacement and accommodation of current spaces, because there are future needs, and there are new nonprofits coming to the forefront all the time that need affordable space. That was number one. The second one was to review the letter that the RPRC sent to you back in April 2019, which spoke to best practices of other cities in Metro Vancouver, and to the view that some of them have city-owned spaces, and they're not just depending on developers to provide the space. So that was were the first 2.
All right, Councillor Howe.
Now, I understand that perhaps you must have read the report and the recommendation. And staff recommended a staged process. So we do this first, and then second and third. So do you think this is the right step in the right direction?
Well, yeah, I understand the need for a staged response. That's not a problem, and I understand the need to go back to the nonprofits and do another survey on what their needs are. With COVID, who knows, and how long that's going to last. I hope it's a blip, and I hope that programs will get back onto in-person, face-to-face, and people are going to need more spaces for counseling, for group sessions, and things like that. So I don't have too much of a problem with the timed approach, and as long as there is a time frame on it, and coming forward with the policy framework, I would think that you could take a look at the policies that are in place now in the City of Richmond for affordable housing and for childcare development space. And those would lead pretty clearly to what we can also do for nonprofit organizational spaces. Right. So that would set the policy framework. And then the economic analysis is important too, especially with the point that we're interested in, is that if nonprofits are put into a space which is down to the studs, it's going to cost them a lot to get it going.
I think you're repeating yourself now.
Yeah, well, I'm answering Councillor Au's question.
Repeating yourself.
Yeah.
My second question is, now, I raised this issue before, saying that, yes, with this recommended replacement policy, we are safeguarding the existing NPOs for future space. But, would it also become a disincentive for property owners not to rent space to NPOs?
I think that's one for the staff.
Yes, staff is addressing this issue. Now, again, from your contact, from your understanding, has any kind of problems like that appeared before? I mean, property owners refusing to rent space to NPOs for the fear that this might be a hindrance to their future application for development. So have you?
I don't know, and I think that's a what if. I can't really respond to that. And I've appeared to in front of you folks long enough for me not to come up with the solutions. That's why you have your highly paid city staff, which do an excellent job, and I would expect them to be able to come up with those answers. But what we can do is we can point out what we see are the problems, okay. and I don't see that so far as being a problem, but hopefully staff can investigate that further.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor McNulty. Oh, your hand just went down. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You're on mute.
First part of the presentation, which I apologize for. So I kind of lost it picking up in midstream, but thank you for coming forward. I look at this particular question in terms of, and I appreciate you putting new spaces forward because we have a meeting on Thursday with RCSAC. And I guess my question is, which organizations and can organizations kind of rank themselves to say, I'd like to be in the downtown core, especially those that and have to be in the downtown core, where other organizations could be elsewhere or be accommodated somewhere else. And can you, Dee, from your point of view, can you see the nonprofits coming up to evaluate themselves along that line?
Wouldn't that be one for the RCSAC?
Thank you.
Well, I'm thinking, but Dee represents a nonprofit. I think the RSAC, the individuals within the RSAC should do it as well, because not everybody can be in the downtown core of Mineral Boulevard, but maybe one or two of them could be.
All right.
And especially when we're redeveloping City Center. We haven't even talked about it. When we're redeveloping Lansdowne, we have some
Is this a
opportunities.
question?
Not everybody can be there. There's 55 groups.
Is this a question?
So, yes, the question was to Dee about groups policing themselves and evaluating themselves to come forward.
Wouldn't that be a tall
not sure.
order?
I agree. I think it's a good question for the RCSAC, and I look forward to participating in that Zoom on Thursday. But I don't represent all of the nonprofits. I'm here representing the Richmond Poverty Reduction Coalition, and we're just a new nonprofit. There are a couple of organizations who have joined us. There's a lot of individuals that want to find ways to alleviate poverty. So that's what we're here for. And if you talk about the services that people on low incomes need, you want to decrease the barriers for them to be able to access the services. And one way to decrease those barriers is to have them on a bus line, to have the services easy to access, and not just physically, but and I know some of the nonprofits are situating themselves in other places. One is out towards IKEA. And at first I thought, oh my God, IKEA. But there's a bus line right out there. So that's the important thing. And then I think the frequency of the buses and, so that's the important thing.
Right.
That costs money too, to take transit. But that's where I think the city core is the best place for services that serve people on low incomes.
All right, Councillor Day, do you have a question?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dee, for coming forward. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about how it's good that we're maintaining the nonprofit space, but maybe we should consider adding more space rather than what they just occupy today. But then you mentioned that there was a lot of more nonprofits coming on board. Can you give an example? Like, should we be looking at 100% more or 5% more? Like, how many more nonprofits do you see coming forward in the next, 5 to 10 years?
I'm just speaking very selfishly on behalf of the Richmond Poverty Reduction Coalition. As I said, we've been a committee that was basically a project of the food bank for many years, and now we're a nonprofit organization. So we have depended, like Blanche Dubois, on the kindness of others, and we're going to have to stand on our own 2 feet and find a place where we are going to be able to meet and conduct our programs. So others may come on board. I mean, the Autism Society, they just built a place themselves, which is wonderful for them. But, there's all kinds of other ways, other services that need being done. And the more that federal and provincial government downloads some services, the more you need nonprofits to come and pick up those services. So
right.
I have no doubt.
All right, thank you very much. And yes, ma'am, please come forward. Carol, your hand's still up. Please have a seat. And I assume you're going to be addressing the same item
Yes,
as
the same item, please.
previous?
Item number 10.
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Catherine McCreary. I reside at 7560 Glacier Crescent in Richmond. I just wanted to echo what Dee was saying. I'm happy there's a policy that's going to become in place to facilitate nonprofits being able to keep space that they currently occupy in Richmond. I do have some concerns though. The 50% market rent, I understand it'll probably be arrived at with various consultant reports and so on and so forth, but there's other components to rent, such as tenant improvements and property taxes, potentially a triple net lease, and I'm not too sure how all those items factor into the rent factor for this project. So it's more of an economic analysis, which I understand is going to come forth in the initiate in the second quarter of 2021. But I just thought I'd put the bug in your ear that those items were of interest. I was talking to Leslie Sherlock earlier today, and she mentioned that in 2019 there's a study done, and average market rent for these types of office spaces was $20 per square foot. So under this 50% rule, I would assume that it would be $10 a square foot. But as you could imagine, there would be inflation and probably different sorts of sites. But that's just the general number I was given. The report also addresses the upcoming site on Alderbridge. It's a previous meeting that I attended where the Community Mental Wellness Association of Canada and the Richmond Society for Community Living has currently found space elsewhere. And as I understand from talking to Leslie, they haven't exercised their right to determine if they're going to occupy the space or not. But I thought if they did and they entered into negotiation with a developer to stay there, it would be interesting to have a lessons learned as how it went and what were the challenges, and maybe the city could learn from that in making future modifications to the policy.
Fair enough. So we'll ask staff, when we get to it on the agenda, we'll ask some of the questions that both of you have put forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, may I have a motion to rise and report? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have the receipt of the committee minutes, the recommendation to award a contract for the video detection system hardware, software, and services, the establishment of underlying zoning for properties developed under land use contracts 008, 13, 22, 68, 100, and 153 in Broadmoor, the application by Brooke Pooney Associates for a temporary commercial use permit for the property at 13651 Bridgeport Road, and the nonprofit social service agency space needs and policy options. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? Okay, let's get the ball rolling. In terms of discussions, we'll ask staff to come onto the WebEx so we can ask about the shelter. I got shelter on my mind. The nonprofit social service agency space needs. We'll just get an answer to some of the questions that have been put forward. So who would be addressing that? Leslie Sherlock?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the questions was about whether this policy would help just current nonprofits or future nonprofits, just how you see it.
Your Worship, the proposed replacement and accommodation policy would benefit nonprofits that are currently buildings that would be redeveloped. However, new space is also addressed in the second recommendation, and that is to implement the zoning bylaw provisions that allow for the negotiation of community amenity space.
Now, we can hardly, you're breaking up really badly. So we're going to ask you to stay right close to your microphone.
Okay, is this better?
Yes?
The replacement and accommodation policy addresses those nonprofits that are already tenants in existing properties that would be redeveloped. However, new space is addressed in the second recommendation, which is to implement zoning bylaw provisions that allow for the negotiation of community amenity space.
Right.
And new space is also would be addressed in the economic analysis, whereby additional density bonus provisions could be explored.
What about the question of ownership? Whether the properties in question would be continued to be owned by the developer or someone else, the nonprofit or someone else?
Yeah, that is another question that will be included in the economic analysis, because there are pros and cons for the various parties for different reasons, and it's really something that's worth looking into.
All right, so that's yet to come. Then we have the question of the cost. The point has been well made that, you know, the nonprofit moves from where it is now, where it's settled, where it's got the space, it's usable. It comes back, it's new space, but it's just a shell space. What about affordability in terms of their being able to fit it out?
The need for tenant improvements is significant and would be a fair cost burden for the nonprofits, but that is also going to be included in the economic analysis because we don't want to push things to a degree that would not incentivize the development in question. Another factor is that with both the replacement and accommodation policy as well as zoning bylaw provisions, these would be nonprofit spaces in perpetuity, and that would allow for long-term financing should the nonprofit need to arrange to financing for tenant improvement.
Now, what about the question of the market rent? So it's in the one-for-one trade-off, it's 50% of market rent, but that's a moving target. So
yeah,
will the city from time to time determine by calculation what is the market rent, or how is that going to be determined?
Your Worship, our real estate services staff provided us with information last year when the space needs survey was being put forward, and that they have various information sources which they can access that gives the average market rent for the different classes of office space, and it also gives estimates as to what the operating costs for those spaces might be that are also passed on to the tenant.
Well, that's okay. That's the second question is will they be given a triple net lease or a gross lease, or what about the payment of tax? How's that?
Yeah, very. Typically, it would be the rent, market rent, plus the triple net. So that more or less doubles the cost. So if the market rent was $20 a square foot and the policy says 50%, they would pay approximately $10 per square foot. And then the operating cost would be an additional $10 to $15 per square foot, and that is variable.
Now, would the triple net part of it be 50%, or would it be 100%?
100%.
All right, and what about the taxes? Now, I don't think these groups that we're talking about are able to claim exemption from tax, right?
That's right. That's included in the operating cost that the landlord passes on to the tenant. That's part of the triple net.
Triple. Okay, fair enough. I wanted to get some of those questions out. Councilors will probably have more. So we'll go to Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting the consent agenda and just want to speak to two of the items. Number 7, the recommendation to award the contract for the video detection system. As I recall, this was approved almost 3 years ago, so it's nice to see it coming online now. And this is a multi-phase project for the implementation of the traffic intersection camera project, which presents an opportunity to achieve traffic, first responder, and emergency preparedness project goals, while at the same time advancing the city's traffic management control system in an effective and efficient manner. And as I recall, some of the holdup had to do with this had to meet the guidelines established by the Office of the Information Privacy Commissioner to ensure the privacy of the public, and that was done. I do have a question, Your Worship, through you to staff. How long and where will the data be stored, and is that part of this contract?
Cecilia, can you help us out?
Yeah. Your Worship, I think Mark Corrado can probably answer that one.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Through your worship to Councillor McPhail, I believe the data will be stored for no longer than 30 days, and the data will be stored on city servers.
All right, thank you very much. And to speak to number 10, the nonprofit social service agency space needs policy options. And thank you to the RCSAC for their multi-year work and reports that brought this to the forefront, and to staff for the work they've done to get us to this report tonight. And so this referral was made just over a year ago, and asked staff, two things: to seek immediate opportunities to address the loss of at-risk, high-priority NPO space. And we see that the report identifies and proposes an accommodation policy and a process to secure space. And we've already seen this work just recently in an application where we did secure some spaces. And the second part was to increase the supply of affordable nonprofit social service agency space. And so that's within the report as well. And I think that, there's still work to be done. And so looking forward to seeing that economic analysis. And at GP last week, we heard that a consultant would be doing the economic analysis, and that the cost for the consultant can already be accommodated in approved budget. So I think it was a good discussion tonight and some good comments, and I look forward to more comments and suggestions and the economic analysis. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty.
Your Worship. Just a quick question, if I may. Councillor McPhail spoke on the one that I wanted to speak on, but I have a question of Mark on that particular one. Who will have access to the data, and what it'll be used for? What will there be? Has there be a privacy commissioner expanded from what we heard 3 years ago to how that data can be used?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, anyone from the public can have access to the footage if they make a request, if they are involved in an incident at a location. The RCMP can have access to the footage if they in turn make a request. Crown agencies like ICBC can as well. Mm-hmm. And we haven't heard any additional information from the Office of the Information Privacy Commissioner regarding expanded usage of the data.
Okay. Well, thank you for that answer. Actually, that is a change from what I recall a number of years ago when we voted for it and what it would be used for. So good work. Appreciate it. Your Worship, I'll be supporting everything on it, but we have a meeting of the RCSAC on Thursday, so this will obviously be a topic of everybody. I have a question of staff, though, or a point for staff. This report is a step in the right direction. It's not an end-all, be-all, and it's not going to cure everything that we want. Okay, we're going to have to still struggle. We have to realize that social services agencies are expanding, and the social services issues are exploding and exponential in many of the areas, and we have to provide for that. The people are doing an absolutely wonderful job, but unfortunately, they're having trouble keeping up too as issues go on. My point here is when we hire the consultant, will the consultant be able to project 5 to 7 years from now when this policy will actually be totally in vogue? The reason I bring that up, Your Worship, the use of $20 a square foot was brought up, and they would only pay 10. Well, in the downtown core, if you can find rental space for $20 a square foot, buy it all and book it. It's not happening. It's not. My concern here, Your Worship, is the value of the facility that these people would be in, and the fact that some were living in warehouses, and I'll call it a warehouse because that's basically what it was, and they'll be coming back to a new facility, and it'll be a total upgrade. Will the consultant be given direction to visualize down the road so we can talk about reality? I don't know who can answer that, but I think that's something we've got to consider.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor McNulty, that is certainly something that the economic analysis would take into consideration, because there's a short-term need, but it's definitely a long-term concern.
I remember when I was doing my training, doing drug and alcohol training on Mineru Boulevard. That's where Raz was first there, way back when. I won't mention when, and now they would be coming back to a new facility. And I think we really have to look at it, because I think we have to look at as well when we're giving density, etc. We have to bring this issue into density so that these people can come back to those facilities, because otherwise, once they move, they'll never come back. And I think we need to protect them, and it's a long-range vision that we've got to look at. So I'll be looking forward to that and bringing that up on Thursday. So the report is good. It's a good step in the right direction. But I think we've got to look for more incentives as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day. Bill, your hand's still up. Councillor Day.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll be supporting everything on the consent agenda. I did have a question of staff regarding item number 7, which is the awarding the video detection system hardware. We're going to be spending $1.44 million over the next 5 years. And the first year, we're going to get 93 cameras. Previously, staff had talked about the revenue that these cameras could bring in to offset those costs, because I understand that if ICBC or someone involved in a motor vehicle accident or even the police requested footage, there would be a charge. So,
you want to know about the recovery of costs?
yeah, it's the revenue that would come in that would offset the cost. I don't think we're going to recover all of it.
Lloyd or Mark?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Day, absolutely. As we move forward, we will be charging for this service and this data, and we expect that we will be able to cover our operating costs and the maintenance costs with the revenues.
That's fantastic. I'm sure the taxpayers would be happy to hear that. And of course, it's going to be very handy for the police and ITBC and everybody. So I'm glad we're putting these cameras in. So it's nice to know that some of the costs will be offset. Regarding number 8, that's the land use contracts. I'm sure a lot of people remember the nightmare we went through with land use contracts in like the West Wind area previously, but this isn't exactly like that. This is actually mostly commercial and multifamily units, and so all we're doing here is we're bringing the zoning and building requirements in line with what the city is already have in place. It's almost basically a housekeeping item. Item number 9, which is permission to allow a business to continue to operate on Bridgeport Road. This is Midland Appliance, and they've been there for over 12 years and didn't realize that they couldn't sell appliances in that location. And their business has slightly changed over the years, so this is to allow them an opportunity to move on. My question of staff on this one is that business in general has changed with online ordering, and people just shop in a different way. Is there a way to have a ratio of retail sales in a commercial use permit area that would be a compromise?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, in terms of the addition of retail activity to an industrial area, that would be addressed as part of the industrial land intensification initiative, which is anticipated to come to council for consideration within the next few months. Currently, what I would say is that introduction of retail uses into light industrial areas and bona fide heavy industrial areas would be contrary to the goal of preservation and intensification of industrial land. But there will be further information coming forward as part of the ILII initiative.
Thank you. So to be clear, we don't need a referral to look at this because we're already looking at that.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that's correct, yes.
Perfect, good. And I think that's important because, you often hear of businesses that will sell off their extra products as almost a garage sale, and they have to be allowed to do something and to get rid of those extra products. So I'm glad that we're going to find ways to be, maybe not completely turn them into real retail, but make them maybe a little more flexible space. And of course, the nonprofit service agency, boy, I just couldn't be happier about this one. We're actually going to save the spaces that we've in the past been losing and at an alarming rate. And, this is a living, breathing document, and I don't think it's going to stay static for the next 10, 20 years. I suspect as we learn more, and as one of the speakers brought up earlier, we've got a lot of test cases happening, and if we need to tweak it, we can do that as time goes by. So I'm very happy to support protecting our nonprofit spaces, and let's find more in the future. Thank you so much.
All right. Carol, your hand's still up. Councillor Au.
Your Worship, first of all, I want to ask a question on number 10 for clarification. Now, we received a memo from staff today. They revised the proposed policy 5051 by adding one paragraph under C, paragraph C. And then they rewrite this paragraph. So are we talking about passing this new proposal or the one which is in our binder, CNCL 159?
Leslie, we would be using the most recent version, wouldn't we?
Yes, that would be, if that is the desired one, then that needs to be specified, and that would be the policy.
I just want to make sure that we're talking about this one, this new proposal.
Yes, that you received today, and it has the added item on the last page of the policy.
Let me take a look at the wording and I'll come back to that.
Sure.
Oh, did you have another question?
Of course, I'm in support of the newest version because it addressed one of the issues that I raised the other night, saying that, the new policy of replacement requirements that might become a disincentive for developers to rent space to the NPOs. And I'm glad that staff has come up with a suggestion to address that. It's not perfect, but I think this is something that is going to work better. And I think the space need for NPOs has been a problem for a long time, and it's a problem probably more complex than we first imagined. So I think this is the first step in the right direction. And as I said, we are not going to resolve everything tonight or in the near future, but I think this is the first step moving in the right direction. And in the process, I would say that we have to be mindful of the unintended consequence that actually would be harmful to the NPOs in terms of trying to supply space. So I'm in support of the newest version.
Now, I think you raised a good point, and I'll put this to council. I take it, I have assumed that the policy that we would be adopting would be the latest one attached to the memo of November 9th, 2020 from Leslie Sherlock, entitled Follow-up Memo Re Nonprofit Social Service Agency Space Needs Policy Options, which has that extra clause that is referred to by Councillor Howe.
Yes.
Is there anybody that is not on that same page? I mean, you know what I mean. Everybody agrees that that's what we're talking about. So by consent, we will change the wording accordingly to refer to this latest memo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. All right, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I too will be supporting everything on the consent agenda. I'm delighted to see the traffic cameras, the award of the contract come through. We approved the traffic cameras 3 years ago because of our commitment to public safety, and it's really, really good to see this coming to fruition. I know that the RCMP are a big supporter of this, as well as fire and other groups that are interested in being able to access that kind of information. I also support item number 10, the nonprofit social service agency space needs policy options. I think this is a good start. I have a concern that putting some of these owners' policies in place might negatively affect whether or not someone wants to initially rent to a not-for-profit. And I think in some cases this may unfairly benefit owners who haven't already rented to a not-for-profit. But I think staff's going to come forward with more. They're going to come forward with some suggestions of how we will grow this and grow our space for not-for-profits. And with that, I think we'll be able to tweak this. I think we'll have some results, we'll have some feedback from our not-for-profits of how this is working and if it is negatively affecting them. Because I think the way the policy is originally set up is it's setting up the situation where no good deed goes unpunished. So if you already are renting to a not-for-profit, if you're already giving them a favorable rate, now you're kind of stuck with them. But if you never rented to one, then you're not expected to do anything further. And so I don't think that's what we want ultimately, but I think what we do need is we need a defined policy, because up to now, for the last little while, we've been doing it on an ad hoc basis. So as developments come forward and we're seeing things happen, we're just sort of ad hoc throwing rules and constraints and things that we want from them. And this way, I think the developers will be able to see, okay, this is what we have, this is what we need to provide, now we understand and it's simple. So I think this is a great start. I've seen personally with Richmond Center for Disability, they're supposed to move back in 3 years to their old location that's supposed to be built. So they were supposed to be able to move back after 5 years. Well, if you've driven past that corner, you know that that building, the old building hasn't even been demolished, right? So that new building isn't going to be ready in 3 years. So it's all very good and well to maybe some have these policy ideas, but it's not quite doing what we want it to do. I think this gives us time to put in place a really good policy that gets done what we want to do, but I think most importantly, it creates a defined policy up front so that we're not doing it on an ad hoc basis. My other concern about this not-for-profit space is I heard from one not-for-profit group that's very successful in Richmond, is this creates a little bit of a downloading. We're taking, the funding for many of these not-for-profits comes from the province. And for us to artificially affect the rental rate, we can possibly be trapping a not-for-profit into a space that they might otherwise be able to leave, but because they've got this good rental rate, it's affected their funding levels and now they can't make enough argument to raise their funding level enough to actually move them to a different space. So I think we'll have to be working very closely with our not-for-profits to make sure that we're not having the consequences that we don't want. I think we want to be benefiting them. We want to make sure that we're giving the not-for-profits the space they need so that the people in our community are getting the services we need. So I think that's the most important thing here. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to comment on what was just brought up about for a development where there's never been a not-for-profit and how that's to be handled. But I think that with the appropriate, there's going to be more attention to this whole issue, I think, in the future than there may have been in the past. And I think that the density bonus may be a way to address that particular issue. But obviously, we'll wait for staff to comment on that more so we can take further steps and develop further policies if that's necessary. So with that, we'll call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? That is carried. Brings us to public announcements and events. The first event or first announcement I would like to make is one that probably everybody has heard of. Congratulations go to our Councillor Kelly Green, who has been successful in the provincial election. Everybody's virtually clapping. So we do wish you well. Obviously, we'll be seeing you for some time, and whatever capacity that's in, Councillor Green, but we do congratulate you on your great success. Secondly, we have some appointments, and these are effective until December 31st, 2022. Stephanie Rudinsky has been appointed as a citizen at large to the Richmond Community Services Advisory Committee, and the following individuals are appointed to the Child Care Development Advisory Committee for a 2-year term. Jared Connolly, Diane Ma, Aaron Manalo, Chantel Pereira, Gordon Sergeson, Alana Van Veen, Kevin Ching, Tanya Lamb, and William Tsai. Now, in addition to those, COVID is very much on our minds. And this Wednesday is Remembrance Day. And we certainly want everybody to take the time to remember and honor those who gave their lives to serve and protect our country. Now, we're very much adhering to the protocols set by the public health officials, and they've confirmed that Richmond's outdoor Remembrance Day ceremony, as we have restructured it, can go ahead with this in mind. But people are asked not to attend the memorial ceremony due to the COVID restrictions around public gatherings. So to enable everyone to still participate in this important occasion, the ceremony will be streamed live online from the cenotaph here at City Hall at richmond.ca/remember. So it's richmond.ca/remember. Visit the website for details, including the schedule and the printable posters, and take a moment to remember in place from wherever you are at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Now, speaking of COVID, I think we're aware that we've had some very serious orders made in the last few days. The province issued new public health orders on the weekend to help stem the spread of the virus. Richmond has worked diligently to protect the community from the virus with proactive measures such as the mandatory wearing of masks in city buildings, reinforcing our commitment to safety. These are important new measures that are now in place for the next couple weeks till Monday, November 23rd. There's a ban on social interaction with anyone not in your immediate household, and that includes meeting others at restaurants. It includes a suspension of group physical activities such as indoor fitness classes or any indoor activity that increases respiratory rates. There's no indoor sports where physical distancing cannot be maintained, and nothing other than essential travel into and out of the Vancouver Coastal Health and the Fraser Health regions. To support those orders and protect public safety, the city has suspended indoor fitness and aquafit classes until further notice. And we do hope that that's not long, but it is for now. Anyone registered for one of these classes will receive an automatic credit, and if someone would prefer a refund instead, please contact the city. All other programs and activities remain in place, but only for the moment, so we'll see how it goes. And I remind everyone to please adhere to all COVID-19 safety measures, wear masks, and protect the safety of ourselves and our community. Then turning to our writer in residence. Award-winning author Lindsay Wong is the City of Richmond's 9th annual writer in residence, offering free virtual public workshops, online events, and conversations through the month of November. The Writer in Residence program supports current and emerging writers through the knowledge and experience of others, and is another example of Richmond's commitment to the arts. Richmond's Writer in Residence program is presented by the Richmond Arts Centre, the Richmond Public Library, and the Senior Centre at the Minoru Centre for Active Living. So if you want more details about that program and the workshops that are offered, go to our city website, richmond.ca/writer in residence. So it's richmond.ca/writer in residence. And with snow and winter around the corner, the city is seeking snow angels to clear snow and ice from the homes of our elderly residents or those who have illness or mobility issues. Volunteers can choose a community they wish to serve, such as their own neighborhood, or they can indicate that it's okay to go citywide, and families and local businesses are also encouraged to participate. So to find out more and sign up as a snow angel, visit icanhelp.richmond.ca. icanhelp.richmond.ca or call 604-247-4453. Deadline to register is Tuesday, December 1st. And finally, speaking of weather, this is the time of year when we see an increase in rain and stormy weather. We ask people to help prevent pooling water by cleaning storm drains and gutters of leaves, dirt, and other debris around their property. With the increase in rainfall and daylight hours decreasing, We remind everyone to be extra vigilant on our roads. Please slow down and take extra care when driving, cycling, and walking, and wear visible clothing. Please be seen and be safe. So, Madam Clerk, bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is one bylaw for final adoption, and there is no noted opposition.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor McNulty and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any unopposed? It's carried. And someone move adjournment. Okay, so moved and seconded. We're now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.